Welcome back to another dispatch from Hollie McKay. Today, we're going to do one of Hollie's vignettes, and we're going to do a vignette about a survivor of Benghazi, Kris Tanto Paronto, whom I actually met with Hollie, I think around the time the movie
That
came
was the
out.
weekend the movie was released, and I
Yep,
hung out with
and
you.
we had dinner with him, and I remember this guy who was not quite sure just exactly what he was walking into on the very edge of fame. And so you just talked to him recently and got caught up with him, and you've kept touch with him over the years. So how is Tanto doing today?
Well, I think it's just, first of all, it's just baffling to think it's been 10 years since Benghazi happened. And that was 2012, and that was, I think, a lot of us in the news business really remember that day. I remember it was just this very bizarre day, September 12th, 2012, and it was really just this large scale attack, on the U.S. embassy in Libya, in Benghazi, and then also in a CIA annex, and you sort of were receiving just so many different vestiges of information. It was very hard to sort of piece together what had gone on, other than the ambassador was dead, and along with three other Americans who were there to either work in intelligence capacity or to protect Christopher Stevens, the ambassador. So it was just a lot of strange information. And Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State at the time, and she really sort of pointed to this very poorly made video that was on YouTube, and that was sort of defaming Islam and the Prophet, and that was said to have sparked these kind of riots in the street. But as the days and the weeks and the months and even the years sort of unfolded, there was a big inquiry into Benghazi. We were still sort of trying to get an idea of how these Americans died and why, I guess, their calls for help and for reinforcements to be sent in were essentially sort of ignored. And that sort of comes down to that vacuum of confusion. So, as a journalist and who works sort of in the war, foreign terrorism field, that was a story that I was sort of assigned to, and tried to work quite heavily over the years, and of course got to know Tanto, who was one of the security consultants that was sort of in the middle of this 13-hour firefight that became the book 13 Hours in the Michael Bay movie, of course. But and my sort of friendship with him was really quite eye-opening, and really understanding sort of all the things that could have gone wrong, that did go wrong, that hopefully we've learned lessons that didn't need to go wrong. But it's hard to think sort of 10 years on, and there's still a lot of things that have been unanswered. And I think for Tanto, that was something that really plagued him for a very long time. Why his sort of friends had to be killed in this, why there really wasn't any accountability, the questions that he had surrounding what happened that night and what happened behind the scenes with the Obama administration, I don't think were ever really fully answered. But what I have learned from him is how he has sort of really come to make peace with that. And he has I guess, done so much work on himself to kind of walk away from a lot of the sort of the pain and the angst that really sat with him for so long, and to be 10 years on and in such a better place than certainly what I could have imagined around the time that you would have met him when the movie came out.
Yeah, well, I remember that dinner, uh, and I felt sorry for the guy because he was going to go into this fame, and really he and everybody that had been caught at Benghazi, in particular the group that he was with, that just basically had to go into this extended firefight calling for help and none coming, and never really being told why, that they were basically sacrificial lambs for something that they didn't understand, and that was going to play into him. I remember seeing him again a few years later, um, and he was in a very dark period at that time. Many things in his life had begun to fall apart because of the stress of dealing with the fame and the politics. And I think you write about the fact that for a while he was absorbing the political momentum of what happened to him, and somehow or other finally figured out that life that wasn't him. He just was a guy that was caught there, and that he's still who he is, and then he moved on from it. And it
Yeah,
seems happier.
I think over time, really what happened was Tanto sort of fell into this role of being a little bit of a political puppet, particularly for the right, who were very determined at that point to open the inquiries, to see some sort of accountability from those within the Obama administration that did not make the perhaps correct decisions on that night. And so he sort of very much fell into this sort of role of being a spokesperson that was deeply critical of everything that happened for obvious reasons. And as he described it to me in our last conversation, was that he woke up really one day and realized that anger, that being riled up, and also riling up the people the way that so much of the news punditry now does, and wasn't serving him, wasn't serving the American people, and that at some point, in order to heal, he really had to let go. And so it's been such a real journey for him, and I hope people read the story to kind of get the sense of where he's at with that, because I think a lot of us can relate to this idea of sort of distrusting the news and eventually feeling like the stories that we hear are just making us so angry to no end, that it's really just become entertainment value. And I think he certainly realized that he didn't want to be sort of put in this position of being the entertainment, so to speak. And there was a lot more he wanted to do with his life, and really go back to his roots, and to remarry his wife, and to be the father of his children again, that for all the years that he may have missed, or the time he was angry about his very long and very storied military career, which had certainly had him in faraway places for a long time, and really just go back to to small town living, to teaching gun classes, to doing some speaking gigs at churches around the world, and to sort of be that family man. And I think there's a really beautiful message in that we can take away, just about really what matters at the end of the day, and that is our mental health, and what we are willing to kind of do to get back to that place that we need to be. And I think, in talking with Tanto, and seeing him come full circle in that, it's hugely inspirational.
Yes, it is actually. I read the article, and it made me happy, because when we met that guy that night, he was cheery, smiling, and was describing himself as the guy who would joke and dance at the compound before any of this happened. And it sounds like he's on his way to finding who he was before all of this, and I'm very, very glad for it. And I'm very glad that you got to talk to him and document that journey for everybody else. Thank you, Holly. We'll talk to you
Thank
again
you,
soon.
Dennis.